Maye Musk had just stepped out of a community health forum in Brooklyn, her heels echoing softly across the pavement as she made her way toward her car. The evening air was brisk, the kind that slid beneath collars and whispered against skin. She had spoken earlier about micronutrient deficiencies in low-income children, and while the auditorium was warm and polite, she left with the same quiet frustration that followed her after every such event. Words were easy, systems were not. Needing a moment to reset, she pulled into a 24-hour supermarket on Flatbush Avenue. The lot was mostly empty, lit by overhead lamps that buzzed faintly. She didn't need much, just some fruit, maybe tea, but she found herself lingering longer than necessary in the aisles. When she finally stepped out with a small paper bag, the night had settled deeper, and the wind carried that dry kind of cold that crept in without asking. As she walked back toward her car, something tugged at her attention. A few rows down, near the farthest lamppost, a security guard stood beside an old, dull sedan with peeling paint. He tapped twice on the fogged window. His posture was more tired than aggressive, but there was a sternness in the gesture. The driver's side window rolled down halfway. From within, a young woman appeared, cradling a bundled figure tightly to her chest. Her voice didn't carry across the lot, but her face did, strained, pale, pleading. The guard seemed to sigh. He said something brief, glanced around, then walked off with a shake of his head. Not angry, just resigned. Maye had stopped walking. The woman stayed still for a moment, then gently shifted the small form in her arms into the back seat. It was a child, no, an infant. Maye could just make out the round shape of a tiny head nestled into mismatched cloth. The woman crawled into the back beside the baby, pulling a blanket around both of them. It wasn't thick. The kind you kept in your trunk for emergencies, not for shelter. One corner of the back window was cracked open. Whether for air or because it no longer sealed shut, Maye couldn't tell. But the wind found it. A small cough floated from the car. Wet. Shallow. Not loud, but startling in its smallness. Maye didn't move. She stood there, half turned toward her own vehicle, the paper bag warming her hands. Something in her tightened, an old muscle memory from years of clinical work, hospital nights, waiting rooms filled with silent mothers who didn't ask for help because they knew it rarely came. The sedan's interior light blinked off. Silence returned. The only sound was the hum of the lights above and the low rattle of wind through a chain-link fence nearby. She could have walked away. But instead, Maye stood there a little longer, staring at the car in the shadows, at the shape of a woman trying to disappear, and a baby too quiet for comfort. That was the moment it began. Not with a crisis. Not with a headline. Just with an instinct. One that refused to leave. The following evening, Maye returned to the same supermarket parking lot. Not by plan, not by obligation, but by something quieter, an unsettled edge that had stayed with her all day. She had tried to write, tried to read, but the image of that woman curled around her baby in the dark kept surfacing like a stubborn note in a song. It wasn't pity that brought her back. It was something more pointed. A sense that the story wasn't done. She parked 2 rows away this time, far enough not to intrude, close enough to see. The same car was there. Still fogged windows. Still tucked into the furthest spot like it didn't want to be seen. The air was colder tonight, sharper. She had brought a small canvas tote with her, water, a pack of crackers, a child-safe thermometer, and a folded grey blanket, freshly laundered. Nothing fancy. Just quiet things. Things that might help without saying too much. She approached slowly, glancing around, then placed the bag gently on the hood of the car. No note. No explanation. Just presence. Then she walked back to her own vehicle and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Movement inside. The woman appeared cautiously at the driver's side door. Her face was pale under the glow of the overhead light, jaw set tight like she was bracing for something. She looked around first, then stepped out, holding the baby tightly against her shoulder. She approached the hood with slow, uneven steps, eyes scanning the surroundings like she expected a trick. She stopped in front of the bag. One hand shifted the baby slightly, the other opened the tote. Her fingers hesitated on the blanket, then moved to the bottle of water. She picked it up, examined the seal. Next, the crackers. She sniffed them. Her shoulders remained high, tense, like she might drop everything and bolt at the slightest sound. She took the bag in both arms, cradling it between herself and her child, then walked back to the car and closed the door. Maye sat in silence. She hadn't expected a thank you. That wasn't the point. But something about the way the woman inspected the items, like they could be poisoned or cursed, tightened something in Maye's chest. That kind of suspicion didn't come from nowhere. It was learned. As Maye turned the keys in her ignition, her eyes caught something she hadn't noticed before. On the dashboard of the other car, half pressed against the windshield, was a piece of paper. It had been there the night before, but tonight the condensation had receded just enough to read a single line through the glass. Kcal deficiency. Pending. Maye's breath caught. It was a printed lab form. Neonatal blood panel. Possibly for the infant now asleep in the backseat. The text had blurred from moisture, but the bold diagnostic marker at the top was unmistakable. Her mind immediately filled in the rest. Potassium-calcium deficiency. Rare but devastating in infants. Without treatment, it could impair growth, immune response, even cardiac function. She knew the markers. She'd published papers about them. She had spent years advocating for these exact tests to be included in low-income state medical programs. It had been her speaking point in front of the Department of Public Health just last year. It had been voted down. Budget reasons. She remembered how angry she'd felt then. How she'd driven home that night thinking about all the mothers who wouldn't even know what was missing from their child's charts. And now here it was. Not in a file. Not in a report. But on a windshield. In the cold. Behind a window half open to the night. Maye stayed in her car for a long time. She didn't drive away. She didn't cry. She simply watched the shadow of the mother holding her baby close, both barely moving under the thin blanket she had brought. The parking lot was quiet. The world, as always, kept spinning. But something had shifted. And Maye knew, without any doubt, that this wouldn't be the last time she came here. On the third evening, the wind had turned sharper. Maye arrived just past 7, the sky already bruised with the color of oncoming night. She didn't plan to stay long. She had packed another bag, this one with formula, a soft infant beanie, and a jar of electrolyte powder, but she wasn't sure she'd leave it this time. Something in her chest had been tight all day, a knot she couldn't explain. And as she pulled into the lot, parking in the same row out of silent ritual, she saw why. The woman, Rena, though Maye didn't know her name yet, was outside the car. She was crouched near the rear door, cradling the baby with both arms, rocking gently but with rising panic in her movements. From a distance, Maye could see her whispering, her body rigid with fear. Then she shifted the baby's weight and shook him lightly. No response. Maye stepped out of her car. Her heels clicked once on the asphalt before she stopped herself. She moved slower now, quieter, the way one approaches a wild animal that might bolt if startled. The baby's face was pale. The woman was breathing through her mouth in short gasps, trying to stay calm, but her hands betrayed her, they trembled against the child's back. Maye approached, lifting one hand. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said gently. The woman turned sharply, eyes wild, and instinctively stepped between Maye and the baby, shielding him with her body. "Please," Maye said again, her voice low. "I just want to help." "No," the woman snapped, voice hoarse. "We're fine." But the baby let out a soft whimper, then sagged again against her chest. His eyelids fluttered. Maye moved a step closer, then stopped. "I'm a nutritionist. I work with infants. Something's not right. Let me look at him. Please." The woman shook her head violently. She backed toward the car, opened the door, and slipped inside, pulling the baby in with her and slamming the door shut. She didn't even start the engine. She just sat there, cradling him, forehead pressed to his. Maye stood frozen. Her hand was still in the air. After a few seconds, she turned, walked back to her car, and got in. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She pulled out her phone and called someone she hadn't spoken to in weeks. "Ellis," she said when the voice answered. "I need your ear, fast." Ellis Jong, a longtime colleague and pediatrician at a clinic in East Flatbush, listened as Maye described what she'd seen. Infant. Under 1 year. Pale. Cool skin. Possibly feverish but not sweating. Listless. Eyes rolling back. Could be hypokalemia, Ellis said immediately. Acute deficiency. Dangerous if the heart's already under strain. Is the baby hydrated? May looked back toward the car. She had no idea. She hung up after getting the name of the nearest 24-hour walk-in clinic. She didn't even think. She opened her door, marched back toward the car, and tapped on the window once. Then again. The woman opened it an inch. If she goes into cardiac arrhythmia, it'll be too late by the time you call 911, May said, her voice calm but unflinching. I know you don't trust me. But this isn't about trust. It's about time. The woman's eyes filled with something beyond fear, something like despair. Her fingers stroked the baby's hair. His head lolled slightly to the side. Please, May said again, barely above a whisper. Silence. Then, finally, a nod. May opened the door for her and gently helped the woman into her own car, turning the heat up. She drove slowly but deliberately, calling ahead to the clinic to tell them she was on her way with an emergency case. No ambulance. No fanfare. Just urgency. In the passenger seat, the woman stayed curled around her child, saying nothing. Her eyes didn't blink often. Her lips moved, but there was no sound. A mother's prayer, maybe. Or maybe nothing at all. May gripped the wheel. This was not a rescue. This was a lifeline. And they were arriving just in time. The clinic was small, but clean. The kind of place built on practical compassion, not corporate budgets. A nurse in a maroon scrub top ushered them through a side entrance and spoke gently, her eyes moving quickly but her hands steady. The baby was taken in without question, and within minutes, the faint hum of a heating pad and soft monitors filled the quiet room. May stood back as the staff worked, letting them do what needed doing. The woman, still without a name, hovered near the examination table, clutching the baby's sock in one hand like it was a tether to reality. When the nurse asked if the child had a name, she answered quietly. Oliver. There was something fragile about the way she said it. As if saying it too loudly might call attention from a world that had already taken too much. The diagnosis came quickly. Mild to moderate hypokalemia, early signs of protein-energy malnutrition, borderline anemia. All manageable, if treated. The clinic agreed to provide formula, potassium supplements, and a 2-day supply of electrolyte therapy. They would have to check back again soon, but for now, Oliver was out of danger. May offered to drive them somewhere warmer. The woman hesitated, then nodded. They ended up at a transitional housing center May had supported years ago, a place with cots and cribs and donated winter coats folded neatly on open shelves. The staff knew May, and within half an hour, a small private room was ready, nothing luxurious, just 2 clean beds and a heater that worked. The woman sat down on the edge of one bed, Oliver wrapped against her chest in the blanket May had given the night before. Her hair had come undone slightly, strands falling over her eyes. Her shoes were damp. Her silence, though, was the heaviest thing in the room. May pulled a chair close but didn't sit yet. I never asked your name, she said gently. The woman looked up. Her voice, when it came, was raspy from disuse. Rena. It took her a few seconds to say anything more. You should have left us alone, she said, not unkindly, just tired. That's what most people do. May finally Saturday. I tried, she admitted. But I couldn't. Rena gave a soft laugh that wasn't really a laugh. Most people who can't walk away usually want something. Money. Proof of goodness. Redemption. May didn't answer right away. I don't want any of that, she said after a moment. I just wanted to understand. Rena looked away. You don't need to understand. People like you get to live above all this. May didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Tell me anyway. It was not a command. It was an offering. Rena stared at the floor. Her fingers played absently with the edge of the blanket. I used to teach, she said finally. Nutritional biochemistry. Mostly undergrad students. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked it. I believed in it. She paused, her mouth tightening. Then I found something I wasn't supposed to. Maye didn't speak, only nodded slightly to show she was listening. Kuno Foods had a contract with the state. School meal programs. You know the kind, pre-packaged lunches branded as healthy but made to cost pennies per unit. Maye's stomach turned, though her face remained still. I was part of a small task group reviewing independent lab data. One of the preservatives they were using, ethyl properdine 6, was showing signs of long-term gut damage in children under 5. Not in all cases, but enough. Rena blinked hard. I brought it to the department head. He told me to forget it. Said the data wasn't conclusive. That the real science was already settled. She gave a bitter smile. A week later, I was pulled into HR. They said there were concerns about my emotional health. Said students had complained I seemed unstable. That I was erratic in class. They dismissed me quietly, with severance, and a non-disclosure agreement I never signed. Maye felt the air thicken. The name of the preservative echoed in her head. It was familiar. Too familiar. 5 years ago, she had partnered on a PR campaign aimed at improving public trust in institutional nutrition. The slogan had been Healthy Kids. Bright packaging. Strong bones. Smiling faces. She'd done a single video spot and a magazine interview. Nothing deeper. Nothing political. But the product line? That had been backed by Kuno Foods. Her image, her words, had helped market the very line Rena had tried to stop. Maye's face didn't change, but something inside her pulled taut. Rena must have seen it. You recognize it, don't you? Maye didn't lie. Yes. There was a silence then, not tense, but heavy with recognition. Like two people standing on opposite sides of the same broken bridge, realizing what lay between them. I thought I was doing the right thing, Maye said quietly. It was positioned as a way to improve access. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Rena said. That's how they do it. They pick people no one would suspect. They use faces people trust. The words weren't cruel. Just tired. Maye looked down at her hands. I'm sorry. Rena shrugged. That's not what I need from you. What do you need? Rena stared straight ahead. I need you to help me make them listen. Maye nodded slowly. Then let's start with that. Maye didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed with the lights off, the silence thick around her, but her mind refused to settle. Images flickered behind her closed eyes, Oliver's pale skin, the way Rena's voice had cracked when she said the words they use faces people trust. At 2:30 in the morning, she got up and turned on her old desktop computer. She dug through years of archived contracts, marketing emails, press photos. She hadn't thought about the Kuno Foods campaign in a long time. At the time, it had been another polished effort in a long career of nutrition advocacy, partnering with a company claiming to make healthy eating scalable. She'd done what she always did, reviewed surface-level studies, trusted the advisors, said yes when the cause seemed noble enough. But now, looking closer, she saw things she hadn't noticed then. The campaign had ended 6 months early. Quietly. With no explanation. She found a note in the internal correspondence, a flagged message referencing concerns raised about ingredient data inconsistencies. There had been a complaint. Possibly internal. Possibly buried. Maye stared at the screen, her hand hovering over the mouse. Then she opened her phone and typed a short message. I was silent back then. I can't do that again. She hit send. The reply from Rena came 20 minutes later. Then don't. By morning, Maye was back at her kitchen table, hair still damp from the shower, speaking into a phone held between her shoulder and ear. I need to talk to Clara Reyes, she said. Tell her it's urgent. Clara was an investigative journalist she'd known for years. The kind who didn't trade favors for fluff. When Clara called back an hour later, her voice was direct. What is this about, Maye? You never call me before breakfast. Maye told her. Not everything. Just enough. The campaign. The product line. The test data Rena had seen. The dismissal. The pattern. There was a long pause. You want to go public with this? Clara asked. After all this time? Yes. And why now? Because I helped give them the credibility they used to silence her. Clara was quiet again. You realize how messy this could get? I do. And it's not going to look good for you. People will think you're just cleaning up your own image. Maye's voice didn't waver. I'm not cleaning anything. I'm untangling a knot I helped tie without knowing. That's different. Clara exhaled. All right. Then let's do it properly. I'll need the original contract, any internal notes, and a sit-down with Rena. Can you arrange that? Yes. Later that day, Maye made another call, to a policy advisor at the American Nutrition Society. Then another, to a legal contact at the Center for Whistleblower Protection. The responses were cautious, measured. Some were supportive. Others asked hard questions. One person, a fellow public health advocate, didn't hide their skepticism. Maye, are you sure this isn't about restoring your name? A bit of late-stage redemption? Maye didn't take offense. She answered honestly. No. This isn't about redemption. It's about repair. She paused, then added quietly. I'm not trying to look good. I'm trying to do good. There's a difference. That night, Maye met Rena again, this time in the waiting room of a small community center near Prospect Park. Rena was holding Oliver, who looked stronger now, cheeks no longer sunken, eyes alert. Maye sat beside her, hands clasped in her lap. I've started the wheels, she said. It's going to move slowly. But it will move. Rena didn't smile, but she gave a small nod. Then let's make it count. And with that, the reckoning began, not with a headline, but with two women who had stood on opposite sides of the same silence, choosing now to speak. The hall was packed. Rows of chairs filled with clinicians, students, advocates, a few faces from the press. It was the annual summit on childhood nutrition and public health, an event that normally passed with well-dressed speeches and slow applause. But this year, there was a buzz. A kind of held breath that lingered beneath the murmurs, the shuffled notepads, the rustling of programs. Maye stood at the side of the stage, her hands folded in front of her. The lights were warm but not harsh. She wore grey, nothing bold, nothing to draw attention. The moderator introduced her briefly, noting her decades of work, her advocacy, her publications. Then he gestured toward the podium. She stepped forward. Thank you for being here, she said simply. I'm not the one you need to hear from today. Then she stepped aside. There was a beat of hesitation in the room, small, confused, and then Rena approached the podium, holding a folded sheet of paper in one hand. Her movements were quiet, measured. She wasn't used to stages. She didn't look like someone who had practiced this moment in a mirror. But she stood steady. She unfolded the page. This, she began, is a statement written by Maye Musk. She asked me to read it for her. Her voice wasn't loud. But it carried. Years ago, I lent my name and my voice to a campaign that I believed was helping children eat better. I was wrong. I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't listen to the right people. I helped silence a woman who tried to speak out, and I didn't even know it. That silence had consequences. I cannot undo what happened. But I can begin to repair it, by stepping back and letting her speak. Rena paused. Her hands trembled slightly. That woman, she continued, is me. She looked up. Faces stared back, some surprised, some unreadable. My name is Rena Daniels. I used to teach nutrition. I used to believe that if you followed the science, told the truth, and worked hard, the system would listen. I was wrong, too. I was labeled unstable. I lost my job. I lost my home. I nearly lost my child. A hush fell over the room. A kind of stillness that only comes when something real enters a space used to performance. But the science was right, she said. And the danger was real. And if even one child was harmed because no one listened, that matters. Rena's voice cracked slightly, but she continued. We are not enemies, she said, glancing at Maye. We are not symbols. We are just two women who stopped being silent. She stepped back from the podium. The applause didn't come right away. It wasn't the usual polite wave of sound. It was slower, more deliberate. It grew. Not loud, but lasting. That evening, headlines began to circulate. Former brand ambassador of Kuno Foods takes responsibility, gives platform to whistleblower. Inside the Department of Health, a familiar memo landed on the desk of a policy advisor who had once voted against expanded neonatal screening. The note was simple. Revisit KCAL deficiency panel proposal. Urgent review requested. And somewhere, far from any stage, a mother tucked her child into bed knowing that someone, finally, had listened. The new place wasn't grand, but it was warm. Rena stood in the doorway of the apartment, holding Oliver against her hip, a bag of donated clothes slung over one shoulder. The space smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner. 2 rooms, clean floors, a window that caught the light just right in the morning. It wasn't permanent housing, but it was safe. Oliver had gained weight. His color had returned. He slept through the night now, most nights. And during the day, he laughed, loud, toothless, full-bellied laughter that made strangers on the street turn and smile. There were doctor visits on schedule, formula deliveries through a new local program, and slowly, the ache in Rena's chest had started to loosen. A week after the summit, she received a call. It was from a non-profit focused on food literacy in underserved communities. They had watched her speech, listened, and they wanted to invite her to be a community advisor for their new curriculum pilot. Just an honorary role, they said. Just your insight. At first, Rena declined. I don't want to be someone's redemption arc, she told them. I don't want to be useful because something painful happened to me. She hung up the phone, unsure if she was angry or just tired. Later that day, she met Maye at the park. It had become a quiet habit between them. A walk, a bench, a shared moment while Oliver kicked his feet in the grass. The trees were beginning to change color, their edges catching the amber light like they had been dusted in gold. Rena told her about the offer. Maye listened, eyes calm. They want to name me in the brochure, Rena said, voice low. I told them no. I don't want recognition for surviving something I shouldn't have had to survive. Maye sat in silence for a while. Then she spoke. You're not being recognized for what happened to you, she said gently. You're being recognized for what you did with it. Rena looked away. It still feels like I'm standing on something broken. Then build on it, Maye said. That's what makes it yours. Rena didn't respond right away. She watched Oliver chasing a patch of sunlight across the lawn, arms flailing, balance uncertain but determined. He didn't know how close things had come. He just ran, and laughed, and fell, and got back up. I told them yes, she said finally. But I asked them to leave my name off the plaque. Maye smiled. That's your choice. But one day, if you change your mind, know that it won't be applause. It will be acknowledgement. Rena turned toward her, eyes soft. You really believe that? Maye nodded. Dignity doesn't need applause, she said. It just needs to be protected. The sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched out over the grass. In the distance, Oliver squealed with joy, arms raised toward the wind. And for the first time in a long time, Rena didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was beginning.